Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Third Legacy workshop series of the 12 principles of the 12 steps. We are in the final month of this series, December, Principle 12, which is service. So I'd like to just thank everyone who has participated in this workshop all year for your dedication to this and your knowledge and your wisdom and your willingness. So I'd like to turn it over to Stephen, who is so gracious to make himself available to be of service.
Thank you, Lara. So here we are once again being helped by District 46, Marty and Claudia. Thank you for the entire year. And to start off with service, I got a little story about it. Um, when I first came into AA, and of course everybody was pitching service then too, and it was like I have enough stuff to do. And my mindset was really how about what's in it for me, not what can I do for somebody else, because my alcoholism took a turn towards self-centeredness. Since then I met other people like that too, but I had a backwards idea about service, along with most every other area of life. But to me, service was, do I want to do it? How much of my time and effort will it take? Will it cost me anything? Will people see that I'm doing something and be appreciative of it? And it was a real twisted view of what later on I found out the spiritual principle of service was. And you couldn't have told me any differently. I hadn't gone through the steps or anything. What I've come to find out is the way the way service shows up in our AA literature, particularly when it's referenced as a principle, is I've come to see that all principles have at least one thing in common. One of them is there's never an exception, or it wouldn't be a principle. So, um, and also AA literature, even our big book, is filled with um, sentences. I'm just picking one out. It represents many of them in the big book, but in working with others, there's a sentence that says, "Practical experience shows us nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics," which is, of course, about service. And it says shows us, not tells us.
Mm.
And also pretty strong in there, it says nothing will so much ensure immunity. Not doubling up on your meetings, not doing all, it just says nothing will so much. I got curious about, well, first of all, I got curious about all the principles, just the spiritual principles in nature, the nature of them. And I found that there's along with that spiritual principle, there's a law that's a spiritual law that says uh, when you help other people, and that could be situations and stuff too, you help yourself. And when you withhold help, you're injuring yourself. You're withholding it from yourself. And of course, that it didn't make any sense to me because if I have an opportunity to be helpful to somebody else and it's not convenient for me, I mean, kind of like to hell with them. Or who's going to be watching to see if, to give me an accolade or something. But I never really got that I hurt myself because it didn't seem like it. It seemed like doing something generous or taking on a position that I'm qualified to take on and seeing that position out. It just mostly seemed like it's kind of an imposition on me. But that's not what the law says. That's just what my mind told me. And here we are on the 12th step, the 12th spiritual principle. And I get it now more than I ever have before. And, looking forward to understanding it even more, that just because my ego-based thinking would tell me one story, like, you're too busy, you shouldn't do this, all those little statements in my head, um, because of the steps and other things in AA, I got to see that it's just a voice in my head. It's an ego voice in my head. I don't have to pay attention to it. And there was a lot of freedom there because most of my life I thought I had to pay attention to that voice in my head. I didn't know that you could continue and not pay attention to it. And so what I did a couple of times was a little experiment. Um, and in the principle of service, or in the law of service, it's what you do helps you. And it's not the ego you, it's who we really are. um our true self, that's humble and real, and not the alcoholic ego-based thinking. And I found out that I would maybe be asked to do something, and my mind right away goes, well, I can't, I'm too busy to do that, I can't do this, I can't do that. And then I would think, what if that law, what if there were no exceptions? And I'm not talking about crazy stuff, I'm just talking about things that can come up during the day. And 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 it involves other principles that we've looked at all year long too. um like we're told in AA that we stay sober by giving away what was so freely given to us. And then just even in our 12th step, they talk about putting principles before personalities. So I tried consciously, when I'm aware, when I'm in my right mind, instead of thinking, who is it that's asking me to do this? It's more like, can I do it? Am I able to do it? And and if I am able to do it and turn it down, do I want to hurt myself? Because that's what the law says. I mean, not like hurt myself. I just withhold an opportunity to be more sober, uh to live life on a more happy basis. And I'm gonna stop in a minute, but like every single step, every principle we've looked at all year, everything, my thinking was backwards. And I got to have a real personal experience with the lines in our book that says we had to give up our old way of thinking, absolutely. And I would laugh at myself because why would I complain about that? My old way of thinking didn't work. And yet I still want to be real cautious about thinking a new way, being guided by these principles that have worked all through, in recorded history. The people and the societies that have followed these very principles have had good lives. And um I'll stop by. I want to stay sober. I want my thinking to stay correct. It's been a much better life for me. And in AA, along with a lot of other spiritual paths, you say, give away what you got. If you want to get, you give first. And that was really difficult for me to put that into practice in the beginning. Not so difficult anymore. Doesn't come completely naturally, but it's not so difficult anymore. Anyway, there's my two cents worth. And um, not to put anybody on the spot, but what I usually do is I just call on people instead of just saying, okay, who wants to share next? And the criteria I used today was who showed up first on the screen, and that was John F.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm John F. I'm alcoholic. I don't have a whole lot to say. I'm just kind of reflecting, and I hadn't really planned on coming today. But it doesn't matter. Uh, I think if I was to give myself a grade, on my service in my life, I'd give myself a C. I mean, I just do. Um, I I just I naturally try to keep myself involved in being a secretary pretty much all the time. With one of the meetings that I'm involved with, I think that's there's no reason why not, and I think that's something I can do. I try to do it. But I have to be, also I just in general, I'm probably not correct, but I look at service beyond just the parameters of AA. And where can I give in general, just in my life? Because I'm not, I mean, I'm aware of how fortunate I am, and I'm aware that that really everything that I do in the idea of giving will come back to me. It just does. But at the same time, I'm not, one of those people that's just really like Steve, it's just constantly giving. I'm still trying to get my life in order, to be honest. I have things I want to do before I leave this realm. I'm aware of it. It's okay. Um, I don't know what else to say.
Well, keeping this conversation, we've all been together for a lot of months now. Those of us that attend this actual meeting, and I don't know what the hell you're even talking about, John. Nancy and I have known John for a lot of years, and a more generous, giving person that's inspiring in so many different areas of life, which, like you said, it's not just in the parameters of AA, it's about life. Um, I got to tell you, I can be a harsh critic, but you got the A+, John.
Okay, well, very, very kind of you, and
And your generosity in the way that Nancy and I know you live your life, it's just been inspiring.
oh, right. Well,
And thank you for it.
thank you. Well, I'm gonna just be really, that's so nice to hear. I'm gonna pass. Thank you.
Nancy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy, and I'm an alcoholic. Uh, and I totally agree with what Stephen said, John. And it kind of goes to the question of like, what is service, right? What is true service? It isn't just about being a sponsor. It's more than the title of sponsor. And I know that you do and have done that before as well. But it comes from true service, comes from the mind that I'm bringing to something, to anything that I do. If I'm bringing judgment, condemnation, fear, hate, okay, that's not serving very well. I think there's a reason why this 12th principle comes as number 12, because it implies that we have at least made a good beginning on undoing the mistakes in our mind that had previously run our lives, so the self will run riot, and the undoing of that produces gratitude, because that is something that we talked a little bit about this morning at our meeting, where we just thought, well, this is just how it is. Like, I'm this ego person. I'm supposed to run my life. I'm supposed to do a good job of it. But most of us, if we got to AA, we pretty much ran it into the ground at, different levels of ground maybe, but we ran it into the ground. We didn't come to AA on our best day. We've all heard that. And so we come feeling pretty broken, and going through the steps, this begins to, we go through various phases, right? Of, oh, now that I've stopped drinking, even that is a service to humanity, just to stop drinking. But then we find, if we stick around, that there's more and more and more. And that is the undoing of the guilt, the fear, the anger that we have carried and reinforced most of our lives. So I can't be really truly served if I'm still condemning myself. Because judging and condemning like blocks that flow of service. Because if I've gone through the steps and I have begun to open and let some of those things go, the gratitude starts to flow in, and gratitude, that opens up service. Whether it's, if I'm a sponsor and I've really looked at my own mistakes and my own beliefs and have desired to let them go and have begun to do so, I can listen with an open mind and an open heart to a sponsee, and share, like, you are not alone in this. You are certainly not alone. I've been there too. This can be forgiven. It isn't by us. True service is obviously, it is not by me, it is through me. So that becomes, like Stephen started to talk about this, that if my main problem was that extreme self-centeredness, then, and that is a pretty lack of service, right? Of true service. So then the remedy is this letting go of that self-centeredness and allowing truth to come back, to flow back into my awareness. And that colors everything differently. When I learned that I didn't have to make up a new me, I didn't have to come up with a new Nancy, that I could see things differently, and Nancy could step aside more and more, and what could truly see and be could come forth. And I knew that wasn't me doing it. And I think that is a service. And being at peace, I think being at peace is being of service. And I can't be at peace if I'm filled with resentment and refuse to look at it for myself and let it go. What service doesn't look like, for me, is like monitoring somebody else's outcomes, or feeling responsible for somebody else's sobriety. I mean, that's not true service. Or if I'm not a sponsor at the moment, if I'm not sponsoring someone, then I can be like a fellow traveler on the road, right? I can be a good listener without, having to solve somebody's problem. I can say, I'm really glad that you told me that you shared that with me, without saying, oh, here's what you need to do about that. I think that, or ask someone, have you talked to your sponsor if they've shared something, and refer them back. I think all of these ways are ways we can be of service. Just listening to someone, and then, we keep the ego from claiming that as my own. right? If service helps me get out of myself, out of that little small self, then that affects the entire day. So that's all I have to say right now. Thanks, Stephen.
Well, thanks, Nancy. And I didn't mention, but of course, it's not new information to any of us, is in AA, they say service is 1/3 of the program, one leg on the stool. That's a pretty big statement. And another quick little story, I just somehow got reminded of it, is Nancy and I bought a house in the early 90s, and we were a couple of blocks from a Catholic church that neither one of us had ever really attended. But at that time in our life, we joined the church, rejoined it, became parishioners at that Catholic church. And I was telling that to my sponsor, and he said, what involvement do you have? Besides going on Sunday and I'm thinking, hey, I got all the involvement I need in anything. And he said, well, if you're going to be part of that family, you should be participating in the family business, meaning the church. And I'd never heard that in AA before. But when he would make a suggestion like that, he wouldn't forget that he made it. So I don't remember if I just went up or Nancy and I went up to the pastor who was a woman pastor at any rate. We really liked her. And I said, it was really hard for me. I said, is there some way I can participate in anything that needs to be done? And in my mind, she's going to say, yes, we need you on this, fundraising council or finance council or something like that. And I just didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it, but I had to report back to my sponsor. So she said, you just live a couple blocks away, right? And I said, yeah, because we did. And she said, do you have a lawnmower? And I said, yes. She said, could you mow our lawn? So for the next 4 years, I mowed the church. It wasn't a big one, but I was just kind of laughing. And I always, most of the time, I had a sponsor come up and help me, edge and mow it and stuff. And we got to spend time together like that. And I think Nancy had to go on this church council, if I remember right. But we had an experience. This is what AA is about too. It gave us an opportunity to participate in just life, what normal people do, and it was pretty cool. There's more to that story too, but for another time. Cindy?
Hi. Am I supposed to say I'm an alcoholic? I'm Cindy. Service, I don't know. For me, it's changed the way I look at it has changed, similar to what everybody else is talking about. When I first came in here, it was like my bootstraps weren't working, and service was a task on the to-do list to be a good person, to be a better person. And that meant that I had to see it of value, and that I wanted other people to see it as having value. And I kind of feel like I was looking in all the wrong places, like I do so many times, that when I finally get the feeling that I'm learning something, it's stop looking in the direction I'm looking and look everywhere else. And so even in AA, service, I was told I should be of service, so I looked for it, and I figured out that I should, be part of the hospital and treatment committee because I feel comfortable in that environment. And And boy, that wasn't where I was supposed to be. And so everything didn't go well there. I got told, "What are you doing? This is not." It was interesting. I was looking in the wrong places. And the other thing is you guys are all awesome role models for how to do it right, how to do service. Like when I call for help, the people I call me. If they don't answer the phone right then, they call me right back. So when people call me, I call them right back because you guys have taught me all that. How to answer the phones down here at Intergroup. I was scared to death. And it was from listening to the people down here answering phones that I learned how to do that. And the peace, the, the peace that I have, that's what I'm giving away. That's and things just come up. It's the actual not thinking about me, but just thinking about other people, just thinking about them makes me open the door when before I probably wouldn't even see that the door needed to be opened. And because people listen to my stories, to listen to somebody else's story, that's the least I can do. And I never would have looked there. Now I do. And I'm learning every day. I continue to learn every day. Oops.
Thank you, Cindy. Oh, one more PS about that church that I mowed the lawn at. The pastor one day, I'd been mowing that lawn for a while. She said, would you could you use our church for an AA meeting?" They had never had AA at that church. And so a few of us started a meeting there, and for the next 10 years, at any rate, it turned into on the night of the week we had that meeting, one of the biggest, as big as any meeting in Seattle. Where from just a few of us, for a couple of weeks, and by the next year, 100 people there, and we had banquets there, we had all sorts of events there. And I'm saying that because I, the real truth is, I remember I fought every step of the way walking up to that pastor's office to see if I could help in any rate. And a lot of people got sober at that meeting that are, of course, still around today. A lot of people. And it came from me. It was less painful to go do what my sponsor suggested than to not do it. Because that was the real reason at the time. I just wanted to do what he said. And so I got to looking back now, I just see, wow, I had no idea what was going to happen as a result of that. And to this day, I don't know what's going to happen as a result of what I do. But if I'm in an alignment with the principle, I know it's going to be good. And then Marty and Claudia, I don't know which one of you showed up first on the screen. So I'll leave it to you guys. Marty.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Steve, and everybody. My name's Marty. I'm an alcoholic. It's
Hey, Marty.
best to keep the best for last. So, yeah, that's great. As usual, Steve stole my share. So, it's hard to, we can rehash a lot of this stuff. It's really simple, but so I think I could say ditto to a lot that's been said. So when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, of course, I had a little drinking problem. or I think other people perceived that. And so I was going to have to do something about it. Had to do with my custody of my son, and what I came to learn in Alcoholics Anonymous is I had a living problem. And and just to reiterate something that Nancy touched on, um, something that I always used to read. I used to go to these step studies right from the beginning. I used to do a men's step study. We would read the book, and I just remember reading this paragraph in step one, on the first page of step one in the 12 of 12. But upon entering AA, we soon take another view of this absolute humiliation. And we perceive that only through utter defeat are we able to take our first steps towards liberation and strength. Our admissions of personal powerlessness finally turn out to be firm bedrock upon which happy and purposeful lives may be built. We know that little good can come to any alcoholic who joins AA unless he has first accepted his devastating weakness and all of its consequences. And of course, I always thought, well, that's my drinking. That's my inability to drink like a gentleman. That's my devastating weakness. But what you taught me in Alcoholics Anonymous, that my devastating weakness was my selfishness and self-centeredness, that I was driven by self-centered fear, that I acted out of self. And it took a while for that to sink into me. And then as a result of that, I avoided service, unlike my spouse, from the beginning. And I always had an excuse because of my schedule. I traveled when I worked, and I often didn't have control of my schedule. So I always couldn't make a commitment that was a weekly commitment, for example, which of course is nonsense. But there is some truth to it. But in any event, it was quite a while before I really began to get into service. And because I'm of the educational variety, so it was a very slow process for me to understand the nature of my malady and then to slowly find the solution. And, as we said, the three legs of the stool, I know so many people that are, let's call them normies, non-alcoholics, who do service work. But they're a small percentage, right? Just like in AA, it's a small percentage that do the majority of service. And the way I understand it, and that when I say that, I mean, the setting up the meeting and chairing meetings, secretary meetings, and doing general service. But I know people that do this, like at this club I belong to, and I just chose to volunteer and go dump the trash once or twice a week. And I go do that. And I didn't need to be told. And what's interesting is it kind of just happened. And then I realized it's Alcoholics Anonymous working through me, teaching me how to be a normal person. And through the years, I was introduced to general service by a sponsor when I used to avoid it. Of course, I had excuses. And then he said, well, Marty, when you retire, you're going to have plenty of time. We're going to get you into general service. So I did get to do some of that, and I most likely will do it again in the future. And I've also began to recognize the rewards of service, and which is ultimately to be at peace, the same benefit I get from the other two legs of the stool, to be at peace, to be content with who and what I am, and in the big scheme of things, and that the life is in the universe is unfolding as it should, and I'm just part of that process. But it's slowly abandoning self one little bit at a time, and and I agree with what's been said, that there were times when the service was serving me, as ego, right? And slowly I'm edging ego out of that, and just being in service for service's sake. And which to me is the essence of the principle. And then we learn that in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I think I'm much less self-centered than I was many years ago when I began this journey. I have progress to make yet, but life is good, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be of service, and grateful that people would trust me to do so, whether it's treasurer of a meeting, or a district, or an area, or chairing a meeting, or whatever it might be, speaking at something like this. So thank you for trusting me to do that, and thanks for allowing us to share and be part of this, Steve. We really appreciate it. With that, I will pass to my better half.
Thanks, Marty.
My name's Claudia. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Claudia.
You're normal. We had power. We have no power. I think most of the island, except for Oak Harbor, is without power since early this morning. And but then it begins to feel normal. Admitting powerlessness. So I have a very academic perspective of this, and a very personal one. My perspective is, when the big book was written, there was no AAWS. There was no general service. That concept, the three legacies, wasn't really in place. I mean, service meant opening your house, making coffee, having people carrying the message, going into bars, grabbing people off of bar stools, going to hospitals, and that kind of service. And that was something that caught my eye early on. I had an opportunity when I had 3 months of sobriety to be of service to my group. And they gave me the key to the church and asked me to make coffee. So every Sunday I showed up at that church an hour early so I could brew one of those big 50-cup pots of coffee. And then I went to another meeting and they asked me to be the treasurer, which was just collect the money, stick it in an envelope, and put it under the pastor's door at the end of the meeting. When I had 3 years of sobriety is when I started sponsoring people. And I went through waves of sponsoring many and some, and getting up and speaking or chairing a meeting, whatever it was I was being asked to do. And I had a lot of other things, 3 kids. I went back to school, but in the meantime, those were things that were very important. At one point, I had gone to the central office, first in Phoenix, and then in Sacramento, and then in Las Vegas, and put my name on the list, on the 12-step list. And that kind of service was magnificent. I mean, I always did for 10 years in Boulder City, which is outside of Las Vegas, on the first Monday of December. Every year for 10 years. First Monday of December was my night, from 8 o'clock at night till 8 a.m. in the morning. And maybe I would get 1 call or 3 calls. But it always, and my name is on the list now with the call service. My name is on the 12-step list. And the reason that was so important to me was on October 7th, 1990, I came out of a blackout at somewhere around 6 o'clock on the Sunday morning. And I had a moment of clarity, and I knew I was done, and I couldn't continue living in the way I was living. The day before, I had no intention of quitting drinking. I didn't think I had a drinking problem. I had a living problem. If everybody would just do what I needed them to do, and I could get my life together, and everything would be fine. And I was a daily drinker, but that was my solution. But that morning, I came out of that blackout, and I had heard about AA, a couple personal stories people had shared with me, and television shows and all that. Opened the yellow pages, found the display ad for AA in the middle of the page, and I called Chicago Central Office at 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning. And I am grateful to say somebody answered the phone. And I said, I think I have a problem, and I want to go to a meeting. And she looked up and she found the meeting near me, and she said, it's a good meeting. She said, it's a meeting that'll go over the first step when you get there. And she said, it's a good meeting for new people. And I went to that meeting that afternoon. Now, what if somebody had decided that that wasn't an important job to do? That wasn't a level of service they weren't willing to commit to. I don't know. I don't know what my life would look. I mean, that set off a series of events in my life, including meeting him at that meeting several weeks later. And that was over 35 years ago. So that's how important that kind of service, being there for the suffering alcoholic. I've sat on the phone with, crying people, and also just simply people coming in from out of town and asking where the nearest meeting was. I went out when we lived in Las Vegas. I drove all the way past the Strip. I drove 45 minutes away from my house to Rainbow Avenue just to pick up somebody who was visiting in town and couldn't get to a meeting. And we stayed in touch for years. So, and all the way to sitting with another alcoholic on my couch. I've spent lots of hours sitting with another woman alcoholic on my couch, reading the big book, going through the steps. I have somebody I do that with every week, every Sunday now, and she lives in Sacramento. So every Sunday at 5:30, we have a Zoom meeting. And so that kind of service, the service that's the principle of working with others in the big book, I put that in the category, the legacy category of recovery. I'm looking at that logo that Lara has up of recovery. But under the legacy of unity, that's also a form of service, because now I have an opportunity to be of service to my group, which is being of service to the person who walks in the door, who thinks they may have a problem. And I am going to have a service of my group. I've been a treasurer. I've been a secretary. I've been a speaker. It's my responsibility to show up for my group, to have a home group, to make sure they're sticking to the traditions. So the recovery, the service is the 12th step. In the unity, it's the 12 traditions. And to make sure we're practicing the 12 traditions and taking a commitment at that level. When I look at the triangle, there's another word of service, but to me, that's different. And that's how I compartmentalize it. Lots of people have different interpretations, and that's wonderful. Mine is, I have a responsibility to be of service to Alcoholics Anonymous. And what's interesting is they don't talk about that in the big book, because when the big book was written, that wasn't a thing. So I've been a GSR, I've been an alt GSR, I've been a DCM, and I've been an area treasurer. And whatever I can do to fulfill a responsibility to the organization who gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams, that's what I do. So I'm of service to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I have been I didn't do it until I retired. So for 13 years, I have had a general service position. We moved here and I raised my hand, and I'm the GSR for the Langley Group. And maybe some point I'll end up in general, working for Area 72, having a commitment. So that level of service. Now, what all these things have given me is a foundation to take this out into the world, to go to my homeowners association, and when they needed a secretary, well, Marty raised my hand, to become the secretary of my HOA. I've been the treasurer of the HOA. I've been members of fraternal organizations. When I worked for the university, I had to be on committees. And I know how to be on a committee. I don't always like it, but I know how to do that. There was an organization locally that a friend of mine said, you'd be really good at that. And I did, and I went, and I am. I enjoy being, I've been on boards of directors. But I have to check my motive, and my motive has to be service, to be of service to the people who are served by that organization. And when I join an organization, it's because that organization provides a service. And that's my responsibility. So the 3 legacies, I really try to make sure that I perform service at all 3 of them. But probably the one that's given me the most wonderful experiences is sitting on my couch with another woman alcoholic and reading the big book and taking her through the steps and watching the lights come on. That, to me, there is nothing in any of that other stuff that I've done that has been as significant in my life. So that's my 25 cents on service. And I'll pass.
Well, thank you, Claudia. And thank you for mentioning the word responsibility several times. Of course, the word responsibility comes from that root word response. And, none of us anywhere would be in AA. None of us, if other people before us didn't respond to to how AA works. Because other people responded, we're able to be here. And anyways, and then Lara's in the main office in the other room. I don't know if she's gonna be able to get on for a minute, but Lara, she's my service sponsor, although I've never told her.
No.
She said she can't talk, so there must be people out there. And her service sponsor, who I know real well, I'm too afraid to talk to, so I just kind of filter my servicing through Lara, who would inspire anybody that ever worked at Intergroup to see how much service a person can give to Alcoholics Anonymous. So thank you, Lara. And you can't talk, so So I want to thank everybody for a great year of looking at the spiritual principles. And as we usually do, we can go out with the responsibility prayer. Thank you, Claudia. And generally start with that with who's responsible?
I am
responsible.
And anyone
Anywhere
Reaches out for help.
want the
And
hand.
I want the hand of AA. Always to be there.
And happy holidays to everybody. And as long as we're on a spiritual basis, still go Seahawks tomorrow night. I got that on the